This is Almond Alert presented by LMC Manufacturing.
Flory Industries now offers a side mount almond tree shaker, allowing us to support every step of your harvesting process. We've also partnered with Fielden to develop Flory Connect, our cutting-edge software platform that uses cell network and GPS communication, so you can remotely monitor machine and engine data from your smartphone, tablet, or computer. We'll discuss these exciting innovations at the Almond Alliance convention on April 26th at 8 a.m. Almond Innovation, the Flory way.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Almond Alert. My name is Aubrey Bettencourt, President and CEO of the Almond Alliance, the voice of American almonds in Sacramento, Washington, D.C. and beyond. And joining me today is Cole Rojewski and Todd Willens with RBW Group, our representation in Washington, D.C. Now, why is this a big deal? It's a big deal because almonds have actually never held or retained representation in Washington, D.C. on a consistent basis. Usually in the past, we've just worked on spot. We've always had presence there, but never this consistent type of presence. Someone with boots on the ground, insight and knowledge to be actively working our issues and also help us expand our own customer service, if you will, back to our membership on issues that may come up that nexus with the federal government, whether that's problems with different departments or agencies, specific projects or programs. So I'm really excited today to give you guys an introduction to these two fine gentlemen who I've worked with at different times in my career as well. Talk a little bit about what it is they do, maybe demystify that word lobbyist a little bit, and then just let them show off about exactly what it is they're keeping tabs on, where they see the opportunities and pitfalls for almonds as we enter this new space. And really this I think, incredible moment of claiming our stake and position as one of the largest ag exports of the United States with presence like this. So with that, welcome, Cole and Todd. How you guys doing?
Thanks for having us.
Hey, Aubrey.
Hey. So let's just start with a little bit of background. I mean, you guys are both Californians, though I think you've spent more time in D.C. than you have, but we won't hold that against you. Oh, Cole's shaking his head. All right. So let's start with just a little introduction, get to know each other a little bit, and then talk a little bit about just what, kind of the advent of you all coming together and what it is, like the mechanics of what you all do. So Cole, maybe we start with you.
Sure. So, Cole Rojewski, born and raised in Clovis, California, stayed in the Valley most of my life. Fresno State Bulldogs, go Dogs, and worked for a number of Valley legislators through my career, and the Department of Interior, where Todd and I first met each other, and that's me. Todd, I'll let you go, and then we can talk about what we do a little bit.
Hey, everybody. Todd Willens. Grew up in Stockton, native. Still have family there, but Aubrey's right. I moved away and started working in D.C. many years ago for California members. Starting when after I graduated from UCLA, go Bruins, and been in and out of federal government, more in than out, and on the Hill. Loved my time, and had great opportunities in the past to work with Aubrey and Cole, and now again, this is just a great opportunity in working for California and California's economy and people there. So thank you for having us, and look forward to doing this. I think we can get a lot done in the next year or two.
So, Cole, you've said it before, and I don't disagree because, as much as I do stuff like this, being behind the scenes is actually where the fun is, right? Like under the hood, wrenching things out. I know, like something I've talked about with you all is I have found myself becoming more technical in recent time, and I think that just comes with experience. But maybe talk a little bit about what it is you're doing a little bit behind the scenes. Now, no trade secrets. I need you guys to keep those aces in the hole for us, all right? But look, I think lobbyist gets a bad rap, and what I find so ironic and what I tell people all the time is whether you like it or not, whether you're alive or dead, there is a lobbyist representing you somewhere. Someone like a trade association like the Almond Alliance is paying somebody to represent interests for you, which is why I really push involvement in your trade associations to understand better what you all do and how that relationship of mean, this is the process. This is the ugly sausage making behind the scenes, ugly Santa Claus suit, pervy Santa Claus suit of government, but it is the part of representative government and how it works, the mechanics of it. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about how this works?
I've always said I like the word advocate better. And we're really Almond Alliance's advocate. And you'll hear about so many different groups doing fly-ins and advocate days, and which I actually think are incredible. When I was a Hill staffer, I would 100% rather talk to the farmer than the lobbyist every single day. The problem with that is the farmer can't be there every single day when there are issues. And so we fill that gap. I think we had you back in DC a couple of weeks ago, and we cover a number of offices. When offices have questions and members of Congress and their staff, who are really the critical piece here as well, that they're the ones doing the nitty-gritty work behind the scenes. And we're here to, one, advocate for Almond Alliance's initiatives and projects, and then number two, help support that staff. Because when members have questions on specific issues or need numbers or don't understand something, it's our job to come in and help support them. And a lot of the time is, whether Todd and I have that answer or connect them with someone that might have that answer, whether it's you or one of your members or a processor, across the board. So I really we advocate for the almond industry.
Todd, did Cole leave anything out?
No, he didn't. I'd say, you guys at the Almond Alliance have done a great job with the information. You have a ton of information at your fingertips, and things are happening. The weather events on Friday, Saturday, Sunday in California were critical in getting that information up to the Hill so they have it. So when they walk in on Monday, they have it for their bosses. Staff are most appreciative of that. The one thing that a lot of people, I think they know, especially when they come to DC, is how young congressional staff are or can be. I was young once, not as young as Cole, but I was young once. But it's important that you keep those touch points. And they are, the one thing in DC, there is a bit of pride, especially in the policy world. People don't want to say what they don't know. So you need to provide it to them, and then they feel comfortable with it. And you guys have a great product, and we're there to help provide that message, and continue the work that you guys are doing. And that's really, we're communicators. And you guys really, your product speaks for itself. It doesn't need a lot of convincing. It's just providing that information up to the policymakers, and it's great.
So one of the things that you both have touched on, and one of the reasons why, quite honestly, I wanted to work with you all, is because of you've been on the other side of that desk, whether that's at the department or on the Hill. And that's something that, I have very limited experience. I worked in the department, but my career's backwards. Everybody knows my career's totally backwards. But I really appreciate the approach you take, and you both have mentioned it, because you know what it means to be on the other side of that decision making or the other side of that policy making. And so what it is that would make that job easier, what it is that makes that job easier to say yes or easier to understand or move in a direction. Can you talk a little bit about how your own perspective is influencing your approach in this position and in this work?
I'll start. Aubrey, I can't tell you how many times and how many memos I've written for, members of Congress or cabinet secretaries. And I take it from the perspective of, if I'm sitting in that desk, what do I need to know? And what does my member need to know? And so I look at it from that lens and really try to prepare it and make it user, easy for the user. When I hand it over to staff, I shouldn't be creating more work for them. I want to make it easier for them to pick it up, understand it, which is sometimes difficult, understand it in an easy to read format, and that way they're able to absorb that, understand the information and issues, and then translate that to their bosses. Right. I think I'm trying to think of a good example, but I'll use the disaster right now, that potential disaster funding that from this weekend is I think that we're doing a great job, and when I say we, I mean Almond Alliance, of preparing them by sharing photos and information of what happened in real time. The photos are incredible, and staff have already said that, because there's one thing to hear about it, and there's another thing to see it. Then do follow-ups on what does this mean potentially. And then the next step is follow through and request disaster funding if needed. And it's a step-by-step approach. And if you jump to step 3 without doing steps 1 and 2, staff get lost, they don't understand it, and they physically haven't seen it. So it's not a real connection with them. And I think connecting them, truly, and have a true connection with the industry will lead to long-term benefit in policy here in Capitol Hill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with everything Cole said. The one thing you have to keep in mind is these staffers, and having been a staffer and for a member from California, almonds are one specialty crop of many, and they are inundated by all the different things that are coming in, and so it's not a fight to rise to the top. You don't want to be bothering them with information that is irrelevant or just not timely. Mm-hmm. You want to provide, but you also want to be, when they need something, anticipating what they may need before their boss asks for it. But certainly they know to the source to go to find the answer quickly. And that is what I think the Almond Alliance has an advantage of in California and with specialty crops across the United States. And we're going to, in improving that. And, it's a lot of new staff. You were up here a couple of weeks ago. We have new members. We have new staff. There's a lot of uncertainty still as they're going through their first appropriations. You have budget coming. I mean, these are all things that are extremely important as we go forward for key programs, but they really haven't learned it yet or experienced it. And they haven't experienced it and if they have experienced, most of them haven't experienced it in a face-to-face non-COVID environment. And so there's a lot of differences that are coming for these staff, which is, your timing was great being up here. It was, I can't say we had the crystal ball and we saw what was coming, but we're lucky we got you up here. We had those meetings, and it allows these conversations to continue a lot easier with you and them, and making that information available to them in a timely manner.
I think you're keying in on something that I hadn't thought about, which is we're always dealing with the youth of the staff and the rotating door of staff, and they'll jump from office to office, and but it's those relationships that string through, whether they're in the building or out of the building. But the youth factor, I think, is really always the shock when I bring people out. I know we were out last year and brought one of our colleagues off of our Tiger team on trade. And I just warned him. I said, you're going to walk in here and you're going to realize the country's being run by 23-year-olds. and I said, and there's a uniform. You'll notice it. Just you'll be able to identify it. And he was just stunned. He was like, you're not kidding. They're all so young. And I said, yeah, but they're bright and they're energetic and they're active. And it's about, to your point, and what I so appreciate, because I think that's so in alignment with where the Alliance leadership is right now, which is we lead with solutions. We don't talk unnecessarily. It's about being in a position of influence and credibility and legitimacy. So no matter the issue, we have standing to be talking about it, and we have the relationships to be talking about it, right, and to be asking for or advising as such. And so when, to your point, that there's a lot of noise. We're one of 500 people walking in any given day. What's going to make the Alliance and almonds stand out is going to be how, not necessarily what or who. And I think that's such a great alignment. And I so appreciate that approach and how that works with where we're headed. And I think there's the political arm to this too. I mean, let's not underestimate, the mother's milk of politics, which is PAC funding and working and playing in elections. Can you talk a little bit about how that influences strategy? Where does the politics meet the policy in that space?
Yeah, I can take that. I think the reality is politics, especially in the House, they're running every 2 years they're up for re-election. Whether it's right or wrong, it's a very expensive game process that we have. Same for senators as well. And it is a factor in, in how you communicate. Some, and it's a different form of communication. You look for opportunities to have the more casual conversation with members and senators, and sometimes the members like to do that through their fundraising opportunities. I don't ever want to say that's the only way that members, do it, but it's certainly an added component. And members of Congress, senators, and House members, and even the politicians in the administration, they have a party that they belong to. They have different advisors, and it's naive to think that they don't listen to their political advisors on the outside that run their campaigns and do things, because those are the people that ultimately were there first before there was a member of Congress or a senator. They had to run a campaign first before they had an office. And so, that's an aspect of it that's an important component. And and figuring out what that balance is by any group, any association. Cole and I have that with you guys, and I know a lot of other lobbyists and consultants and communicators in DC have the same thing, to balance that and be like, all right, what's the right balance on that? And so, but luckily, you guys, you have engaged in that and before. You have a lot of good personal relationships between your growers and your producers in the state that have kept really good relationships with the political leadership that represents California and DC.
I think it goes back to just connecting them back to their constituents, right? They're all, every member have bosses, and those are the constituents. And something that I really like what we do when we go into offices is we talk about how many acres of almonds are in their district, how many processors are in their district, connect them with someone locally to talk to. I think those are all very important steps, because at the end of the day, they're there to represent their constituents. And if we can make that connection between them, their district or state, and their constituents, it just makes the conversation so much easier.
Yeah, I think that's a key component. So shifting gears here, let's talk about where are we sitting today? What's the current analysis? We get great updates from you all every week, whether that's, bugging me on the phone, which you do. I mean, I bless you for bugging me on the phone. Much appreciated. But talk a little bit about, and I think something, we may regularly want to do is let's educate a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about what you see going on right now. We all hear and see headlines all day, but you guys are actually on the ground and in these rooms having these conversations. What are you seeing in terms of just the current temperament of policy, a couple of big items moving? Where do you see opportunities or pitfalls in the next, 3 weeks, 3 months? Look in the crystal ball a little bit. Let us know what you're seeing out there.
Well, I think there are two major big opportunities that don't come every day for agriculture. And the first and the shining star is the Farm Bill, which comes up only every 5 years. And it's up this year. And there have been great signals from both the House and Senate committees that they want to pass this in a bicameral manner, in a bipartisan manner, that they're working together. Almond Alliance was able to host Chairman Thompson from the House out, last week or 2 weeks ago now at the Farm Show. And the Farm Bill is just such a comprehensive bill. There's going to be everything from the Conservation Reserve Program, disaster pollinators, market access program with trade, adjusted gross income, navel worm, and then you have all of your other programs, which are kind of very important, but also just reauthorizations, your specialty crop block grants, your research initiatives, specialty crop research initiatives. All of that's coming down the pipeline, and we're going to see that start to really move fairly quickly. They have a September deadline on that bill, and I think this week the House is holding its first Farm Bill hearing. A couple weeks ago, we saw the Senate host their first Farm Bill hearing, which highlighted trade. We're getting a lot of good signals and a lot of movement. And then I'll say this on the Farm Bill. There have already been so many great conversations across the board in the delegation on Farm Bill, whether that's Mr. Duarte or Valadeo or Senator Padilla and Feinstein. it's such a great bill because it's so bipartisan. And I think that that's something that we're watching and working with all of our offices very closely on some top tier priorities.
I think too, just with the Farm Bill, knowing you got to split Congress, right? So you're going to have fiscal conservatives over on the House side saying, listen, if you want to bump up somewhere, we're going to have to show us where you cut. And I think you've got, it was great momentum hearing Stabenow on the Senate side say, yeah, let's go ahead and get this done. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. And I know in the conversations we've all had, and you guys very brilliantly up front said, Aubrey, you can't suggest new money unless you show us where it's coming from. That's the only way we're going to really stand out here. Because I think a lot of people come to the trough just asking. And I think what we've done so well working together is get real prioritized and actually get the language drafted. That makes this much easier. And show where the dollars and cents work out on these programs. Again,
it goes back to preparing it for easy consumption from staff, right? Here it is. Here's what we'd like to see drafted and why it matters to the farmer. And I think, having all of those steps and handing over is really important and key. I think Farm Bill is a little bit of easier pull on the funding levels because everyone's talking about fiscal year 22, and luckily or unluckily, I don't know from your position, from whoever's position, but the last Farm Bill was done 5 years ago, and so that definitely with inflation puts the Farm Bill, it will allow the Farm Bill to be expanded just slightly within the current House budget restrictions. When we look at a House appropriations, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. And I think that when we take our view for appropriations, again, I'd expect to see massive cutting, slashing of money from the ag portion of that. But what we could do, what we're looking at is also how, trade is obviously, it's all about trade in that bill. Luckily, certain folks are really focused on the nutrition piece in House appropriations, and that's going to be something that we're watching. But there's a lot of good ag provisions and appropriations, and then there's the Senate. I think that's the big question: is how is appropriations going to move forward this year?
So is that your shining star number 2 that we're keeping tracks on? Is approach?
It is. Yeah. It is. And that one's a little, not as many questions have been answered. It's still kind of being shuffled and what are the rules for this year's appropriation bills? What are they going to say? What will qualify? And I have a meeting later this week with Mr. Andy Harris, Congressman from Maryland, who is now the subcommittee chairman of Ag Appropriations. And it'll be interesting to talk to him and see where he's at on some of these issues too, and where he's wanting to work and focus these bills. That's something that we're watching closely and having discussions with, because we want to push and get as much into these bills early and work with committee staff and their chairs and rankers.
Where do you see, just before I ask, what juicy gossip you guys are hearing right now, but where do you see an opportunity to play differently than traditionally? I think there's, just your own analysis in your own time. How have you, and where do you see opportunity for any advocate, whether that's in ag or outside of ag, to really, to your point, Todd, too, just the game has changed a little bit in some ways. There's, like any game, it'll evolve and change with different players and times and conditions. Where do you see opportunities for groups like the Almond Alliance to think differently about their government affairs approach on the federal side?
I have a personal soapbox that I'll say.
Do it.
I'll turn it over to Todd because I've spoken way too much. But I think that groups in general, across the board, regardless of industry, always get caught in these massive, comprehensive bills that have these shiny objects in there, and the bills that will likely never pass Congress. And I think that we come out and we, and I'm not saying Almond, but in general, groups will support them and, pound their fists and say, we need this, while there's these small fixes and bills passing and being signed into law that no one's watching. And I really think that if we took a more strategic approach, and this is in general across, all industries, of working on small fixes that make sense, that are common sense, and work with members to pass them, I think that over time, the small fixes will either equal or even more so than the comprehensive bills long term. I think that's something that's always overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I agree with you completely. I think the three of us in our past lives have seen that, Congress and tweaks can be made on smaller bills and in funding bills outside of just straight dollars, not getting bogged into that, but can be very directive and be beneficial to helping a certain industry or constituency with a certain agency and getting the agency to move without having to be, totally disruptive. And so I would agree with you on that. I do think also on the trade issue, it's a big item. It's going to be interesting. Trade is a slow, slower than lava, right? You never know where it's going to go, and it's kind of, how fast is it going to flow? But it'll be interesting to see now that there's announcements today out of the EU that they got agreements with the UK on the Northern Ireland Protocol that, and I think my understanding is there was an immense amount of exertion from the US to the UK to cut a deal here. Where are the UK agreement and where future EU ones? And do we see this administration begin to engage now, because they nailed that down? They made some agreements to see what happens with a number of the markets in the UK, especially with the UK, and then EU, and then other countries as well. So, there's no promise, but I think that'll be stepping up, and we'll see how that goes over the summer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've talked a lot about, like you said, I think everybody wants to pay attention to the big, bright, shiny ball. And I love that phrase that the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
But and you guys know me with my movie lines, but there's a movie that I love the line from it, which was, but God is in the boring housewife stuff. God is in the little nuancy things that no one's paying attention to. And those can be, to your point, Cole and Todd, they add up over time. Sometimes those little things add up to make big differences if you know how to look at them.
I'm going to say this. This is kind of a little off topic, but I think it kind of fits back. I don't know if you guys have watched Clarkson Farms yet.
Yeah.
Jeremy Clarkson. Mm-hmm. I think that he's one of the best advocates for agriculture there is at the moment. Granted, it's in the EU, but he really translates the small things that farmers have to deal with every single day and how ridiculous some of these regulations are. Mm-hmm. And I think that fits right back to the United States as well. And it highlights for the general public what a farmer has to do on a daily basis and how sometimes it's very, very unreasonable. And what can we do to fix it? And it just kind of fits back. I love it. Big fan of Jerry Clarkson too.
Yeah, all the way back to when he was racing Aston Martins across Europe. I fell in love with Aston Martin between him and James Bond. All right, last but not least, any hot, juicy things we're focused on here in the next couple weeks?
We're going to have a budget.
Mm-hmm.
Deadlines. Appropriations, Farm Bill, a lot of deadlines are coming down, so we're submitting our request and working with offices. I think that's the next month's kind of goals. Yeah. I do say this, I think we didn't cover it, but I want to highlight it. For the first time ever in the Congressional Record Statement, we highlighted National Almond Day. And then we were up on the Hill delivering almonds and just talking to staff. And, they were munching on them. And it was a great time. I think that was really fun. And wanted to throw that out there as well.
Well, you guys did yeoman's work getting those things delivered. And we had that running both sides of the coast on that day. And it was fun, and it's one of those things where it's like a real life meme, right? It's like, here, just get into real life and associate it with something other than, a 7-Eleven. But I think that was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you guys help with that too. And we're hitting those deadlines. I know you guys have really pushed on Farm Bill. In fact, I think we were a little ahead in the sense of kind of having identified and prioritized. We actually, are working on different avenues, which I love. We never put our eggs in one basket. And so I appreciate you guys always being on the ground and helping us see that. Same thing on trade. I know, Todd, you've been totally deep diving on this, and we're looking forward to having more to work on there. So this won't be the last time I drag you guys onto this podcast. I'm sorry. But it'll get better over time, I promise. Thank you so much. I appreciate you always representing us and being good Californians too. As an unapologetic Californian myself, I know what it means to be away from home, but also to kind of carry it there. So thank you all so much. And thank you for being out of the box and different and putting up with our being out of the box and different. We kind of think we're special, and appreciate that you guys think so too. And welcome to the team. And from all of us at the Almond Alliance, we thank you all. Check us out and learn more and get updates. If you're not a member of the Almond Alliance, you don't get to hear from all the cool stuff from Cole and Todd, and you don't get the inside straights on what's actually going on. And you're probably not coming to convention in April, where you could meet these guys and hear more. So I suggest becoming a member of the Almond Alliance. And if you're not a member, you might want to talk to your Huller and Scheller and see if they're a member. But you can find out more at almondalliance.org. And until next time, this is Almond Alert.